So claircognizance is that feeling of, I just know. Right. And that's what most people, this is my husband's least favorite intuitive part of me. It's a gut feeling. And so what you're describing, the butterflies in the stomach, the things like that, like those are their gut feelings where you just know that something is right or that this is the direction that you need to move in. And a lot of times that's where people's intuition starts because
Mm.
it's more connected to the lower chakras, and not all of us have been taught. We were born very intuitive, but then we're taught to shut it down, right? Like people just say all the time, like, like that's not the way the world works. And so
Mm.
we aren't taught to tap into that intuition. We get taught to use logic and only logic.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I have here Miss Stacy Gissal, and she is a life coach. We're going to get to know her and a little bit about what she does, and hopefully we'll get some good inspiration and motivation from her. So, Stacy, tell us about you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on and allowing me to be with your listeners. It always means the world. So thank you for that. I am, as he said, I am Stacy Gissal. I was born in Ortonville, Michigan. And is exactly how it sounds is how, yeah, whatever you're picturing is probably correct. So born and raised in Michigan. I'm in Michigan right now, but my husband and I, we do a lot of traveling. We started, COVID kind of blessed us with that opportunity. And so we've been doing a lot more traveling. So it's kind of actually rare to find me in my office at home. Usually we're out and about. So it's kind of like a Where's Stacy situation.
I practically live in my office, so I want to get out and travel, but it hadn't been possible lately. But anyway, let's get into your life coaching. How did you get started doing that, and exactly what does that entail?
Oh, goodness. That is a loaded question, Kyle. So let's go ahead and start with how did I get started? You know, what's interesting is that I would say that it all started when I've really pulled together. I'm trying to think of like where the best place to start this. When I was 21, I went to nursing school.
Okay.
And I went to nursing school, and it was because I always knew I wanted to help people, but we're not taught that there's anything else besides, like, the helping professions. And so I went into nursing, never have stepped foot into any type of medical anything. But for me, like, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to get through it, even though I almost passed out like multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
With different things. And so that kind of, I went through nursing, and then on that journey, I worked in like this with special needs for a while. I worked with Alzheimer's and dementia. Like I worked in a lot of different atmospheres. I learned a lot through that, but I knew that it wasn't my path. Like, and there was kind of this nagging feeling that I was supposed to be helping people, but it probably wasn't in this capacity.
Mm.
I was really into fitness and all of that. And then I started getting into nutrition and stuff. And so from nursing, I actually went into my first, like, quote unquote, entrepreneurship thing was I became a nutrition coach. So I realized that I could help more people by coming at it from a preventative place. Then in nursing, we kind of have to help people once the damage is already done. Right.
Yeah.
So it was that. And then I was doing like fitness for special needs. And so through that process, I saw the really really good that can come from focusing on our health, and then I got to see the dark place it can take us to, because we become obsessive. Not
Hmm.
everybody, but I did. And so once I was on the verge of like an eating disorder,
Yeah.
and I remember I was running two businesses. Like I had stopped nursing. I looked, the way that a lot of women say they want to look. I had a supportive husband. We had a house on the lake, like all these great things, right? And I remember sitting at my counter and I was like, I'm miserable.
Mm,
Like, I am so miserable. And so from that point on, I realized that something had to change. And so I asked for help. I reached out to a mentor because I knew that my health was suffering, and there was a lot of there. So we started with that work, right? And
right,
we started kind of with a process that I didn't want to go through, which was gaining weight and doing all these things. But it was through that process that I actually had to change and shift, not just what was going on physically, but I had to change my mindset. I had to be okay with not looking a certain way. I had to look at myself and say, like, what am I trying to prove here? You know?
right, right,
And so, yeah, that kind of took me down a road of becoming a holistic health coach. And then from there, I realized what I was helping people with and what my superpower is, which is really connecting the dots and realizing that the thing is never the thing. Like what we think it is on the surface level is never what it actually is. And
right,
so I believe that we have these three pillars, if so to say, like if you imagine a triangle, and each one is equally important, and that's like our physical body, like is obviously very important, but we also have this mind, like our mind and our emotional health is really, really important. And then we have this spiritual or spirit aspect or our soul that is really, really important as well. And like we have to, in order to feel really good about our life, we need to find whatever our balance is in that. And people tend to focus on one or the other, or maybe two of them. But what I really try to do is pull all of that together to help
mhm.
you realize like what that means for you so that you can wake up every day and be excited about the life you're living.
Oh, yeah. When I was in my early years, uh, I thought I was invincible. Nothing was going to hurt me. I was just going to be healthy the rest of my life. And then age 36 came around, and I was a bad drinker. Didn't eat right. Ended up having a heart attack, and then found out that I was diabetic. And that's when everything changed for me. I learned that I had to give up the drinking and I had to eat right and get the exercise. And unfortunately, through the years, it's been a struggle with my health. Because I ended up being disabled about 2 years ago. I have a degenerative disease in my spine, and so life has definitely changed. I'm not able to exercise like I used to, and I want to get out garden and all that, but doing everything that I'm supposed to do, I have number one got out of the wheelchair, so I don't have to use that anymore. But it's still there's still so much more to learn, and like you said, the spiritual side of it, that's something I'm trying to get in touch with as well. So what you're doing is something that I'm very, very interested in.
Mm, and you know what? Kudos to you for, making the changes because it's so often, and I see this all the time, is that we try to put band-aids on things, right? And so
Hmm.
at 36, and this would be a question for you, is that a lot of times what happens is, God or the universe or whatever it is, we get these like subtle taps on the shoulder all the time of like, I need to change something like I'm not in alignment, like I'm not doing necessarily what's best for me. And there was probably like little moments, and then there comes the moment when you finally just get hit in the face with the 2x4, right? Because it's like, okay, we've
Yes.
tried, right? Like we've tried to give you, and I've been there too, right? Like I don't know how many taps on the shoulder I needed to get, that I was like, my health was deteriorating and all these things were falling apart. But it wasn't until I really got that hit in the face with the 2x4 that I started to listen. And I think that that's common for so many people, and it can be the most subtle things, right? Like it could be a job change, it could be a move, like it can be
Mhm.
things that just aren't working for us. And I think that we go through life trying to be the definition of everybody else's definition of success. And I don't think that we can find balance in our life if we're trying to balance what society has told us we're supposed to be or what we should be. And that's why the first thing that I do with people is we really, really dig into what's important to you. What is your definition of success? Because that's what's going to be your guiding light and your North Star to find the balance in your own life.
True. Well, one thing that I really need to work on, and although it's gotten a lot better, is the emotional part of my life. When I had, well, my father committed suicide, my little brother committed suicide, one of my best friends did, and that was all within like a 3-year span. And I didn't go through the emotions. In fact, I dove more into the alcohol, cocaine, and just and I didn't let myself feel. And then all that came to head. I guess I was in my early 40s, and it was like a volcano, and I ended up curled up in the closet, crying, just couldn't stop. I was on the verge of just totally losing it. I ended up in a mental institute for a couple of weeks, and finally was able to kind of get some of those emotions out, learn, what my mental state was. But to this day, I still don't think I have let myself feel what I needed to feel back then, and that has been a hindrance for me.
Mm, man, and like sometimes in those moments it can feel like you're so alone, and like even now, and there's so many people who probably feel what you're feeling, and it doesn't have to, like, you went through some hard shit, right? Like that, there's no doubt about that. And like, and as men, like I am so compassionate towards men because you guys are literally taught not to feel. Like
Exactly.
you are taught that feeling is a weakness, and you just go through life and you suck it up and you do what you're supposed to do to provide for your family, do whatever it is. And like none of us work that way. And so it's not uncommon. Like I've actually done a lot of work even with my dad, and he's the same way. Like there's so much that's bottled up, and the drugs and the alcohol and the different things, like they're ways to numb it out. And
Yes.
we hope that but one of my favorite things to say is the only way to the other side of anything is through it. And when it's actually interesting, because this correlates to, so going into some of the spiritual aspect of this is it really it correlates with our second chakra, so which is our sacral, and it's where we hold all of our emotion. And
Hmm.
so it's messy for most people. It is kind of a shit show. That's okay, right?
Really is.
And it really is. And so, but the animal that has to do with this particular energy center in our body is the crocodile. And it's because when you think of how a crocodile hunts, like it stays underneath the water and then it comes to the surface and it grabs whatever, it is that needs to be dealt with, and then it rolls around with it. It spins it around as many times as it has to, and then it doesn't actually, it very rarely just like finishes the job. It just kind of lets it go, right?
Right, right.
And that's what you have to think about with your emotions, is that
Mm.
we have to be willing to grab a hold of them, spin around with them for as long as it takes. And for so many people, they put a time limit on that, right? Like, okay, I'll feel it, but I'm going to feel it for the next 10 minutes because I don't have time for this. Or like whatever that is, but like you might need to feel it for, you know, hours, days, weeks. Like you don't get to put a time limit on clarity and healing. And however long you need to sit there and spin around with it until you can let it go, you have to honor that. You have to do it.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, as going back to like my childhood, I am very transparent with my audience because I know there's somebody out there that's gone through similar things. But I was molested when I was about 7, 8 years old, and that was something else that I kind of hid away. And I think one of my superpowers is endurance. It's persevering. I'll get down, but then I learn to pick myself back up. when I was about 25, I started preaching, and I was a preacher for about 5 years. Now, this is the problem. I was into religion at the time and not spirituality. I wasn't,
Mhm.
really connecting with Christ or connecting to God the way I was supposed to. So I've learned to kind of leave religion behind, because to me, that's just rules that man has made up with his interpretation of the Bible. And actual spirituality, which is, getting in touch with your chakras, getting in touch with that, your soul, and connecting with God. So my I guess my comment out there is don't put your faith in religion, put your faith in God, and get in touch with your spiritual side. And
Mm.
that's been a big difference as far as the way my life has changed.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing that up because it's actually interesting. I did not grow up with a religion, and I for a long time in my life I actually thought I was broken in some way because I was like I don't fit. Like every time I loved going to church because I could always pull something out of the message that was coming through, but it never felt right to me.
Right.
And I think that everybody is different. And I think too, sometimes people look at spirituality, they always try to put me in a box. Like it's very funny. I even have friends that do this. They're like, um, they'll be like, well, so you're Buddhist. And I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, so you're Hindu. And I'm like, no, like I'm not going to put it, I like, it's not a box because to me what spirituality is it's a combination of all of those things, and it's like you said, I think that there's a lot of rules and a lot of things that were maybe left out of religion.
Mhm.
But this is how I like to think about spiritual or religious leaders that came to earth and kind of did their teaching. Is I believe they're all here saying exactly the same thing, but like when you say something to somebody and then somebody else says something to somebody and it resonates with that person a little bit different
Mhm.
because like it's just the way they speak or how they speak or the words they use, like whatever that happens to be. That's how I like to look at, Buddha and Jesus and different, like they're all saying the same thing, but they came to speak to the people who are going to listen, right,
Right.
to them. And so, but man loves the separation. We love it because it creates control and it creates power over certain people, certain things. And we love control because we all are so fearful,
Mhm.
because we like all control stems from fear. So if we live, and I used to be a control freak, so I know that we try to control our lives, we try to control other people because we are afraid of what might happen if we surrendered a little bit and we did allow, it's that combination um of logic and intuition and science and magic, right? Like there's never a this or that. Like it's this beautiful balance, and being able to find that um is just a really powerful thing to do. So I'm with you. And now I realize that me not having a religion growing up is a gift to me because I've been able to go out and look at all the different ones, and like I get a Bible verse dropped to my phone every single day because I'm like, okay, like what does this mean to me? And I think that there's so much beauty in religion. It's just clouded with the judgment and it's clouded with the rules and all of that. So now I find it kind of cool that I have this opportunity to pull from all these different ones and create something that is like that's my center, that I can feel and that I can resonate with, and that yeah, like that's just kind of fun for me.
It seems like the church has gotten more into, I guess, war with each other. I started out going to Methodist church, and I've been to the Church of Christ, um, the non-denominational. I was a Baptist preacher, and the one thing I guess that turned me off is everybody was arguing, this is what you're supposed to believe, you're supposed to speak in tongues, or you're supposed to do this ritual. And it was just a constant war, and instead of, I guess, embracing each other, there was more division, and that's not what God's all about.
It's funny that you say that because I always laughed about Christianity because, it's obviously such a huge thing. But I was like, one thing that has never made sense to me is I was like, how can one thing be so separated and like people can't even agree within that one thing on how things should be done? And so the thing that I always go back to is that for me, and everybody gets to have their feelings and their opinions and whatever they are. But for me, it's I truly believe that nothing that was made in the eyes of God or the divine or the universe or whatever it is that you happen to resonate with, it's all about oneness, and anything that separates us was created by man. Like,
Hmm.
there's no doubt, in my mind. And so I think we just have to be willing to take a look at that and say, is whatever this is bringing us closer together as not only human beings, but with the earth and with the, like, all the different things? Because, like, when you look at what's happening in our world, in our, on the earth, all the things, like, if people were truly happy, if people were genuinely excited about their life, um, and not just for show, like, we wouldn't pollute the earth. We wouldn't want to hurt other people. We wouldn't
Exactly.
feel this, like, the whole world would be a very different place if everybody woke up in the morning and they were like, I'm happy with who I am, the life I've created, all of these things. Like, we would want to do nothing but continue to help lift each other up. And I think that that's where my mission comes from, is like, just being happy is genuinely happy, but we have to fight for that every single day because most people
Yeah.
don't want us to be happy. Um, but if we could find that, then, like, that creates a ripple that is just beyond anything that you could ever create, beyond any business that you could run, beyond anything. Like, just, I mean, when you smile at somebody in the store, like, that is enough to create a ripple that you might not even see,
Hmm.
like,
Yeah, truly. We go to the store, and you know, I, I I know what's going on in the world, and it seems like there is a division that they're trying to create between us. Because if we're together as one, we're powerful. We can eliminate these governments and the things that they're doing wrong to people. But I go to the store and I don't see that division. I see people smiling at each other and talking to each other. My grandson he'll just say hi, hi. He's like 18 months old,
aw.
and it doesn't matter what religion this person is, what the color of their skin is. These things don't matter. They stop and they say hi, and then we end up in a conversation, and it's a beautiful thing, which I strongly believe that social media, it does not represent society as a whole.
Hmm.
There's there's just a group of people that are miserable that get on there, and they they wreak havoc on this planet, in our society. And so
Yeah.
that's why I gave up Twitter. I was tired of the ugliness on there, and I was like, you know what, that's it, I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah. And I think it's always a lesson in, like, to me, everything's a lesson, right? And I always, we actually talked about this earlier today, is like knowing the difference between, is this person here to teach me something, and then drawing a boundary, right? And like, even with social media, it's like, man, I know that something that I'm probably here to learn this lifetime is unconditional love. And
Hmm.
like, knowing that, you're right, like, there's a lot of people who, they want, the separation makes them feel like they're a part of something, and all they want to do, like, if we really dig into it, they just want to belong to somebody and be accepted by something. And so the way to do that is to create this separation, and then all the things, right? And so for me, I always try to look at those situations and, like, learn that, like, it's not about me, it's
That's
just
right.
they have some things that they have to work through. But yeah, I think we just have to do our part, to show up as our best selves. And that's my goal whenever I work with anybody, is to help them create that balance, because the second that you do that, you give people permission to also do it, right? Like, and I think that can be a really powerful thing.
So when you get into teaching your lessons, how do you, I mean, do you like do this individually? Is it, I don't know, I don't know, a session with a group, or, I mean, how do you do this?
Yeah. Actually, I work with people in quite a few different ways. So I do have a group that I put together. Up until this point, it's been mostly like women, but I like in the groups, but I do also work with people individually, both men and women. I do one-on-one stuff, but I start everything I do actually starts with something called a white light session with me. And it's really fun because these sessions they're an hour long. And it's a way for me to really dive into your subconscious and pull to the surface, like whatever it is that's blocking you, that's getting in your way, that maybe is keeping you stuck in your life in this moment. So it doesn't matter if you've never done any type of work. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. You could be the most successful person from the outside in. Um, but there's like when we're reaching towards becoming our highest self, there's always another level, right? And with
Right.
every level, we have lessons that we have to learn. We have parts of us we have to strip away. We have things we have to change. And so, what these sessions allow me to do, and the person I'm working with, it's like a rototiller. We like rototill a bunch of stuff to the surface that maybe we didn't even realize was blocking us or keeping us stuck. And then we get to start to work through it. And that to me is where the fun begins. People love to do the sessions because it brings a lot of clarity in the session, but also like in the week or so, like beyond it. But my challenge to people is that a lot of times they do them and then we want things to go fast, and this kind of work it's not fast, and we have to be committed to the discipline of actually working through it, because we can be aware of something and not do anything to actually change it, and that's really not moving us forward either. So
I have two questions for you.
yeah.
Number one, what exactly goes on during your sessions? And number two, do you ever work with past life regression?
Oh, that's fun. Those are fun questions. So um that's really interesting. Anybody who works with energy, I have learned that everybody has their own unique style, right? And
Mhm.
so for me, sometimes, sometimes past life stuff comes up. Um, it's not that often because I tend to work in the here and now. And the reason I think that this is my gift is because there's always going to be ancestral stuff that we're working through, possibly past life stuff. And the more and more work you do, the more that stuff uncovers. But most people haven't even figured out how to live their life right now.
Mhm.
And then I think we're always looking for the root. And I trust me, I love to connect dots. And it's so fun when you can figure out what that moment was that maybe sparked this. But what I also believe is that we don't have to know where something came from to start to change it. And that's why I think that like I tend to work in the here and now, and who knows where that kind of goes from there. And then what happens in the sessions? Oh my gosh, this is such a fun question. Nobody has ever asked me that. It's so funny because I did one actually with people have a hard time explaining it, and I get it. And I did one with somebody the other day, and she's like, people keep asking me and I don't know what to say to them. And I'm like, I'll just walk you through it. So essentially, like I said, we all have our energy centers throughout our body, and when they need, like, our goal is to have them all balanced. We come to earth with things to work on, so they're not, right? And like, even if we were totally balanced when we were born, life experiences is going to knock them out of whack. And so our goal is to have them balanced, but most of the time they are imbalanced or they're completely blocked. And so we have to, and that doesn't allow the energy to kind of do what it needs to do so that we can live our best life. And the thing that some people don't realize is that when things manifest in us physically, so whether that be disease, um, illness, whatever that looks like, it can't like it. The only reason it came through physically is because we ignored it on an energetic level. So the goal is to catch it before it manifests in us physically. So yeah, I'll just give you like a breakdown. The hardest part for people when I do a session with them is the first 25 to 30 minutes. I just guide people into a meditation and I ask you to sit there for 25 to 30 minutes. And they're like, you want me to do what? I'm like, I know this is going to be the most difficult part. Because we're not used to sitting still. People don't like to sit still because in their head, that's not a productive thing to be doing. Right.
Right.
So it's funny. I joke that the first 10 minutes people are like kind of losing their mind. And then it's like time just kind of slips away. Like they're like, oh, okay, that actually felt really good. So that's what happens. And during that 25 to 30 minutes, that's actually when I'm connecting with them, with their subconscious, with that energetic body. And our energetic body usually has a lot to say. It just because we don't pay attention to it all that much. And so that's where I go through each of the different energy centers. We clear them. We really see what kind of pops up. And then after that's over, I have you can share any of your experiences that you might have had. Some people fall asleep. Some people have cry. Some people have, you never really know what's going to happen. And I
Right.
say there's never a right or wrong. But then we talk for about 25 to 30 more minutes about what came through. And then I always love for people to leave because I think the only way to change what we're doing is through or change who we are or whatever that looks like is we have to implement and take bold action towards moving through it. And so I like to give people different things, whether that be journal prompts or action steps that they can start to take. And then this kind of work, that's the thing is even though it's like personal development or this or that, like we think we have to do it alone. And the really hard part about doing this type of work alone is that we can't see our own blind spots. So we're going to be missing something almost all the time. And so that's where I really like to help people continue that journey and not feel like they're alone because we're all going through something, but also be there. I will be your biggest cheerleader, but I'm also there to challenge you and to have you think different, and I think that that's where, that's why I love to work with people on just like a deeper level for a longer period of time.
So, what is it like when you connect with somebody's energy? What is there a certain feeling to it, or a certain way that you're thinking? I mean, what is it all about?
Oh, gosh, Kyle, you are asking me some really fun questions. Okay. So it's different. And this is actually really funny because I joke with everybody I do a session with that they're like my favorite thing to do because I literally have no idea what's about to happen. But I was taught by my amazing mentor how to kind of tap in. And like I said, my way of doing these types of sessions is completely different than the way that she does it. But I would say that it's always different. But when I connect with somebody's energy, my goal is to not be thinking because I don't want my ego involved. And that's why I actually love doing it with people I've never met because I have zero way of putting my ego in there. But it's different for everybody. I've done sessions on my dad. I kind of spoke about my dad a little bit. And one thing with him is him and I are very close. And a lot of times family members, have probably been together in more than one life. You just don't know where. Like he might have been brother, he might have been son, who knows, right? But with him, I feel like every time I do a session with him, I am like, next thing I know, like I'm crying, but it's not me crying, if that makes sense. And so I talked to a mentor about it and she said, you probably were very, very close. Like your souls are very close. And like he feels comfortable enough to release some of his feelings through you. That doesn't happen very often, but it's an interesting premise. And I think the reason that I'm good at this is because, and I'm really good at what I do is because I don't take on other people's stuff.
Right.
So I can, I can talk through it with you. We can go, but then I can kind of leave it because I understand that like, it's not mine to carry. Right.
Right.
And so how does it feel it's different every time. I would say that I only do so many a month because they are, even though it seems like I'm just sitting there energetically, it's a lot, and people feel it afterwards too, like the person on the other side. I'm like, you need to drink lots of water. I know you felt like you just sat there, but like energetically you actually did a lot, and there's a lot of purging that's going to happen. So everyone's a little bit different, but
Mm.
it's always fun.
So would you say you're an empath?
You know, I have never, how am I starting to say this? Okay, so this is really funny because I'm like the nurse who's like, suck it up, right? Like, you're okay. So if I don't think that was compassion was actually not like a big thing of mine, which is why I know that I came here to work on my heart. It's one of the energy centers I came to work on, because now my compassion it's completely shifted. But I would say, so we all have intuition comes through in like all these different ways.
Mm.
What you're talking about is clairsentience, and a lot of people might resonate with this. So clairsentience is for those people who have ever been called an empath or a highly sensitive person. It's because you easily take on somebody else's like emotions and different
Right.
things. And it's actually a beautiful gift if you can learn to separate yourself from it. So yes, can I read a room? Can I know when something's up with somebody when they don't have to say it? Absolutely. But it's about this balance of, I know when something's mine because I can feel it almost in my body.
Mm.
But when it's somebody else's, and anybody who's listening might be able to feel this, it almost feels like it's sitting on top of you.
Mm.
Right? So when you're and so if you can learn to be an empath, be a highly sensitive person, but also release what's not yours, it is such a cool gift, because you have a
Yeah.
way of being there for people that other people might not be able to. So you just have to learn how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I had different psychics and empaths and people with abilities on the show, and for me, I know when they're connecting with me because I get butterflies in my stomach every time.
That's so fun.
And I know everybody's supposed to have abilities, but not everybody taps into them. And it's very curious to me what that's like, to be able to connect to somebody on that level.
Yeah, Kyle, and like, so what you're talking about, I didn't know we were going to get into this, but let's have some fun with it. So there's is claircognizance. So claircognizance is that feeling of, I just know. Right? And that's what most people, this is my husband's least favorite intuitive part of me. It's a gut feeling. And so what you're describing, the butterflies in the stomach, the things like that, like they're gut feelings where you just know that something is right, or that this is the direction that you need to move in. And a lot of times that's where people's intuition starts, because
Mhm.
it's more connected to the lower chakras. And not all of us have been taught. We're born very intuitive, but then we're taught to shut it down, right? Like, people just say all the time, like, like, that's not the way the world works. And so
Mhm.
we aren't taught to tap into that intuition. We get taught to use logic and only logic.
Right.
So for a lot of times, and this is where my intuition started, was a gut feeling. Like, I could always, and it's that feeling that shows up and it doesn't go away. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you try to push it aside. It always comes back, and it's never wrong.
Hmm.
And this is my thing for you, Kyle. So when you have a gut feeling about something, and this is for people who are claircognizant, it's really interesting. Very rarely can you talk them out of anything, because they can't explain how they know. They just know. And
They
like,
just
they're not willing to be stopped, because they're like, you're just being pulled so much into something that, like, it's hard to get in their way.
I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but Sarah Lemos. She was on my show. She's on that show Ghosts in Morgan City.
Okay. No, I'll have to look her up.
Well, anyway, she's very talented in her abilities, and I asked her because she was single at the time. It's like, do the guys kind of freak out when you're dating them and they know that you're a psychic and you can kind of tell what they're thinking? It turned into a really funny story. I'm going to encourage people to go look at that video. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but it was quite a funny conversation.
I bet. I can only imagine. So let me ask you, Kyle, if you're up for it, do you want to hear about the other two Claires? That way we can
Sure.
everybody can kind of know. So the ones that I just spoke about, clairsentience and claircognizance, that's usually where people start, again, because it's more of like a body feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more connected to the lower chakras. Not a bad thing. We need to be equally connected to all of them. But as you start to kind of trust those feelings, a lot of times they end up being, they transform, because most of us have all four of these in some way or another. There's just certain ones that come through a little bit stronger than others. And so, but as you start to trust that intuition, trust those gut feelings, and become more connected to spirit and the divine, and really just it's your inner wisdom. That's what intuition is. It's your inner wisdom, but you have to go inward to get to it. Is these other two can start to, kind of show up a lot more. So one is clairaudience. So that is like it's hearing. So this is where, for people who are like really drawn to song lyrics, like if, like you're having a hard day or you ask a question and like the next thing you know, like a song is speaking to you in some way. I always joke that a song lyric, I'm pretty sure, saved my marriage at one point. And so people who are really drawn to music or song lyrics tend to have this. Also, people who are just like, probably people who are teachers, like anybody who's really communicative, like authors, coaches, or if you're really sensitive to sound. So the clairaudience, the way that kind of comes through, it's like a little voice in your head. Now, we're not talking schizophrenia here. Like, we're talking the fact that, because it's just like a little voice, and people think that it's going to be like someone else's voice. It's not. It's your voice, because it's really just your inner wisdom that you're tapping into.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very calm and steady, your voice, right? And they usually are pretty short messages that come through very quickly. Like, they're there and then they're gone. The reason that this one takes more time to develop is because we don't trust it. Our ego gets in the way. We're like, I think I might be making this up. I don't know how many times in my journey I have literally said that I might be making this up. Like, I don't know. But you have to start by starting to, maybe if it tells you to like move across country, that might not be like the first thing you start with, but if it tells you to maybe go to this place or go work in a different place today or whatever that is, like, listen and just see what happens. Like, start to trust that it's guiding you for a reason, because that's what our intuition does. And then the last one is clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is the sight. So when people think of this, they instantly think of psychic, right? Not everybody who is clairvoyant is necessarily going to have these super psychic abilities. And that's okay too. But these people tend to be very drawn to art and like design and color. They might see colors or auras around other people. A lot of times in the beginning, that can just be like a white aura. This is people who tend to see a lot of symbols. They see angel numbers a lot. They see like animals in their meditation. So this is me. People think this is really cool, Kyle, until everything has to be deciphered, right? Like, you get shown a cow in a meditation, you now have to go look up and see what a cow means, because like there's a reason it's coming up, but symbols don't tell us a whole lot, right? So we have to kind of go through and figure out what those different things come from. So, but visionaries and visualizations are normally easy for these people. So it's just people who can really like, there's always like, I'm definitely a visionary in my life. I'm not necessarily an executioner, or that's a bad word. An executor is what I meant. So,
Who we killing
yeah,
today?
I'm also, I'm also not that. So just so everyone is clear on that. But, anyway, so that's kind of and again, this one is another one that, it can pop up as like a flash of a memory, or like they're almost like flashes, and they're kind of like, it's kind of like a memory, and like the front of your, because right here is kind of where it comes through in our third eye.
Right.
Again, this one, it takes time to develop because we don't trust it. We're like, yeah, I don't know about that. So, but the more and more you practice and experiment with it, the more you will learn to trust your intuition, which is trusting yourself, which is I think one of the most amazing things and gifts you can give yourself, is to start to trust yourself, because we're taught to do the total opposite our whole life.
I think the problem is we put up these blockades to keep us from getting to that next level. And I don't know if it's just you're not sure, or I mean, I don't know. There's different reasons I guess people have for putting up those blockades. The world opens up so much when you reach the next level, when you bring up your vibrations. And yeah, I was on all kinds of medications for depression, anxiety, uh, PTSD, all these different things. And I trusted in those drugs. Now, must emphasize, I'm not a doctor. Before you do anything, talk to your doctor. But for me, when I got into like meditating and trying to get more in touch with my spiritual side, I was able to wean myself off these drugs. When I'd get into a situation that could cause anxiety, I would start the meditating and, tell myself it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And then I'd get to that situation, I was able to handle it. One example is we took a trip to New York a few years ago and then took the subway. And of course, all those people can cause me severe anxiety, but I was able to focus and I got through it just fine. So, what you're talking about, with the meditating and all that, you can change your life so many ways. You just have to trust. That's the problem that people have, is trusting in these things. Just give it a try. And
Yeah, I always say experiment. Like,
right.
worst case scenario, it doesn't work for you, but give it the opportunity to try. Like, try it on and give it enough space to do it, and I think, you said something that, like, why do we put these blocks on ourselves? And like you said, there's so many different reasons, but I think a lot of it is fear of judgment, fear of like it not being socially acceptable. I remember my husband said to me, Stacy, like, I want you to show up, be authentic, be whatever you need to be. Just understand that people are going to have questions. And they're going to want to, and I'm like, I get that. Like, I totally get that. And whenever you are doing something different, people are going to question it. But it's just really interesting, because going back a little bit to religion is funny, because when somebody's like, yeah, well, we go to, this church, and I don't think ever in my life I have thought in my head, why? Can you explain to me why you go there? Like, because, and they probably don't know, like that might have been how they grew up, whatever it looks like. But I just think it's funny, because that's, things being socially accepted or not scares a lot of people from showing or even experimenting with these different things. And I had to go through that as well. Like, on my podcast, I think I did it today. I kind of like came out of the spiritual closet, so to say, because I realized that this was an aspect of myself that I really couldn't hide any longer. And it's such a huge piece of what I do. Like I said, like I love to connect the dots, and there's things that we have to focus on in the physical body, and our mindset is important. But I really believe that the missing link is that spiritual connection. And you need all three of those things equally to be able to find that balance. But it was hard for me, and I've done a lot of work on showing up authentically and showing different aspects of myself. And allowing myself to be who I am. But the closer and closer you get to being who you are, like truly authentically at a soul level, the more painful and vulnerable it is to show that part of yourself, because
Mm.
not everybody's going to understand it. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to let those people go so that people who can come in and support us and truly love us can show us unconditional love is what we need in our life.
Yeah, I try to show people unconditional love. There's certain people that are in my life that I've known for 30, 40 years, and I love them to death. I'd do anything for them, but unfortunately, because they're still into the drinking and the drugs and things like that, I've had to distance myself from them. So I love them from afar.
Mm. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd get caught right back up into that same circle, which is something I can't do.
Well, and kudos to you for having boundaries, and I think that love has no distance, and we can, and this is something that I don't remember what book I was reading, but I said with any relationship is that, and I want you to think about this, not just in your relationship with other people, but also your relationship with yourself, because
Mhm.
the reality is we cannot show other people unconditional love if we don't have that in ourselves. Like we
Right.
can only give the amount of love as to which we can give to ourselves. So, but something that it said was that we have to do two things in any relationship. And the first one is seek to understand. So whether this, again, a lot of times what I work with is your relationship with yourself. And then we kind of, because that's where it all starts, right? We
Yeah.
cannot, like, we have to start there, is seek to understand yourself. Like when we can understand ourselves, it's we have so much, we're so much more likely to be able to come back to balance, because we're like, oh, okay, I understand that I'm running a little too hot here, so I need to calm it down, right? And here's how I'm going to do this. But seek to understand, and if you're thinking about friendships, relationships, whatever that looks like, you seek to understand what that other person is feeling or thinking, and we a lot of times don't ask enough questions because we make a lot of assumptions, and I'm guilty of that myself. But then the second thing we have to do is radically accept for who they are right now. And again, I want you to put this in your own life first. How,
Mm.
because we really suck at radically accepting ourselves for who we are right now. That doesn't, like, we have to radically accept ourselves whether we change or don't change. And with other people in our lives, it's about that too. Like we can't go around expecting everybody to mold into our expectations.
Right.
And so if we can radically accept them, then it's like, okay, then when you can have those two things, it opens up an opportunity to help them, whether it be yourself or somebody else. You now have this opportunity to help them. Now, I said the word help, not fix,
Right.
right?
We
So,
want
and
to fix
that's
everything.
everything, everybody, ourselves, but like, no, like nothing's broken, right? Like, and like, I don't believe that people are broken. I used to think that I was broken, but I know that that's not true. I just needed some help.
Yeah.
And so, but that help is what can challenge us to become the best version of ourselves and the highest, like getting to that highest self. We need other people, because again, we need somebody to help point out our blind spots. But it takes a lot to it can take some work to get there, right? And
Yeah.
I still don't like being told where my blind spots are, but it's an opportunity for me to really become my best self. And yeah, so it's just something to kind of think about.
It's never ending. And I'll tell you, when I got married the first time when I was 19, and during that marriage, we were married for about 20 years, and I totally just lost touch with myself, and I hated myself. I couldn't forgive myself for anything. It was an awful time in my life. And then when we got divorced and I was out on my own, I learned to get in touch with me, with the things that I like to do, the kind of person that I wanted to be. I wasn't doing it just for somebody else. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
do I?
that was a hard thing to do. But I got back in touch with myself. And unfortunately, it took me till I was almost 50 before I finally, learned what I really wanted to do, the things that I really love in this life. And I guess part of it was I was afraid that I would be, ridiculed for the things that I like to do. I'm a paranormal investigator, and
Fun.
I don't
Not
care.
for me.
Not for you. I don't care who knows anymore. Used to, it was kind of like, oh, I only tell people if I know they're into it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
But why? Why hide it? That's something that's part of me. That's something I love, and I think my purpose is to try to bring positivity to people, try to bring some kind of inspiration, motivation. And even if I don't become, some rich person or famous person, that doesn't matter. If I've helped somebody, then that's success for me.
Kyle, and that's a beautiful thing, because like purpose and passion is really, what is that thing that you would do if there was no glory at the end of it? And would you still do it? And so often we're searching for that. We're looking for glory. And I know even in my own journey, there was a time that was me. And for me, it was, I wanted to be seen. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so the deeper thing was that I just wanted to be seen, but like I had to see myself for what I had to offer. And that's how I like everybody, man, if everybody could see themselves for like what they truly are and how much they actually have to offer this world, it'd be a very different place. Um, it's really cool. And I love that. And you know what? Who cares that it took you almost 50 years? Like most people never get there. They
That's
never
right.
get to that spot. And so it's never too late to start to think about changing your life in some way. And like I said in the beginning, the fact that you are happy and that you love what you do, that impacts people in a really, really beautiful way. And you just have to know that.
Yeah. Well, for me, I refuse to be a victim. Um, just because I've had all these obstacles thrown my way, I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as I guess it's those teaching tools that I can pass on to somebody else. It's like, look, if I can get through this, you can get through this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so what? Okay, yeah, I've still got back problems and things like that, but it's not stopping me. I'm not using these things as an excuse. You can, I've seen people accomplish things that can't even get out of bed. Look at Stephen Hawking. That guy was in a wheelchair. He couldn't even talk. He had to use a computer, but look at all the things that he accomplished. You can do it if you just put your mind to it.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, there's this quote, and I wish I knew who it was by, so I apologize. But it's like wisdom is like rainwater. They both collect in low places. And there is some like you have to be willing to sit in the suck sometimes, because like, and it's okay to be like, this sucks, right? Like this sucks, but I know that at the end of this suck, there's going to be wisdom that comes from it. And those are things, that experience of life and sitting in the suck is something that like only you have. And that's so much more valuable than anything that you could read in a book or, find in a podcast or whatever it is. It's your experience. And I just think that like, yeah, you've been through a lot. And like, because of that, you have a lot of wisdom to share. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. And that's awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, we all have to, we have to persevere. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fall. We're going to have our down days. I don't want anybody thinking that, my life is just unicorns and rainbows all the time. I'm not always happy. I find myself, getting mad sometimes, getting sad, the thing is not to stay in that. You have to get
Mhm.
out of that mindset and put yourself on the straight and narrow, I guess you'd say. So I'm gonna ask you another question before we end the show.
Yeah.
Have, have you had someone that you've counseled that they've come back and that say they've finally accomplished whatever it is they wanted to accomplish, that I guess just somebody that sticks out in your mind? You don't have to mention their name, but something along that line.
Oh, I'm trying to, there's so many, but this is one I'm going to say because I think that her story will resonate with you a little bit. That when she came to me, she had worked on building a business and she was like, Stacy, I cannot do it this way. Like I'm burnt out, like I'm exhausted. And she also struggled with a lot of physical abuse growing up. And so the words that she really connected to were resilience, right?
Mm.
Like, and which is very similar to you. So I'm seeing a pattern here. But and you have to be to kind of move through a lot of those things. But working with her, she went through one of my Evolve Beyond Limits Academy, and we dug in so deep. And I was like, it's great that you know all these things, but we really have to work on actually doing it different. Right. And she is pretty young. I want to say she's 28, and she had cancer
Oh my goodness.
at 26. She beat it. And then as we were working through the program, it came back, which
Oh,
is, again, this is but the way that she was able to handle it this time was so different because she realized that it was an opportunity, because she thought she had done the work, right? And a lot of times we think we've done enough until our body or something tells us different, right? And so this
yeah.
was her opportunity. She was like, oh my gosh, like I truly have to do this. Like I have to do life completely different. And this is the part that people often miss, is that we try to change little things. Or like you said, a lot of times people will just say, well, I'm just going to stop drinking or this or that. But like it has to be an entire lifestyle change.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her, it was so fun to see her, like, I'll never forget. She messaged me because she's like, and this is where we pull everything together, I guess you could say. She was like, we had this tree, I think it was a tree, fall on like something in their house, and like near their house. It was going to cost like $2,000 to fix. Like they didn't have the money to fix it. And she's like, oh no, they had just paid off her husband's credit card. And like, then this happens. And she's like, son of a, like, so, like, and that's how this is so funny, because this is how the universe or God tests us. Like, it's like, oh, you think you've done the work? Hold on, let me see. And so she kind of laughed. She was like, well, like her attitude towards it was, well, thank goodness we paid off the card and now we're able to pay for this, right? But then here's the really cool part. Next thing you know, I don't remember if it was a check that came in the mail or something for like almost the exact amount
Oh
that
wow.
they had to put on that card and that's where we have to realize that we're always protected. And if we can keep, like, if we truly do trust in ourselves and what the universe or God is going to provide for us, they will always provide. We just have to take the steps. Like, prayer's not enough, right? We have to,
Right.
you pray for it and you take some action, but then you see how it can beautifully come together when we're in that place of receiving. So, but yeah, since then she's never been happier. They sold their house. They're on their way to getting their dream home. She completely redid her business, because people who are entrepreneurs often, they stop doing what they were doing in corporate or whatever it was because they were exhausted and burnt out. And then they take whatever they were doing and they create a business that does the exact same thing. So for her, she was able to rewrite that story of like Mondays I don't even know if she works Mondays, because she was like, I want to just like enjoy Mondays and for it to be just like an ease into the week. I'm like, yeah, like that's because you have an opportunity right now to create anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
Create what you want. don't create what you don't want. And so, yeah, it's just been really fun. I'm still connected with her on so many levels, and she like things just keep getting better for her. And it's because she did the work. And this is the last thing I will say about this is there often comes a time when I'm working with somebody where there's a lot of times when it's like, why am I doing all of this? Right? Because we don't see the result. And we're like, Kyle, I ordered something from Amazon yesterday at 10 a.m. and I had it by 3 p.m. So our world has conditioned us
Yeah.
to get things immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But why I'm saying that is because there's always this moment where they'll say, it's like over the weekend, everything just came together. And I'm like, that's amazing. But understand that everything can come together in an instant. But the only reason it came together was because of all the work that you have done up until that point, because you stayed disciplined and committed to the process without being so attached to the result. A lot of times people do this work because they want the result at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's why you're doing it, you're missing the point. And
Yeah.
so, it's just everything can come together overnight, but it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why we have to stay committed to our path and our healing, and just know that when like our timeline doesn't really matter.
That's right.
So
Yeah, we want things at a certain time. It don't always work that way.
very rarely.
I don't believe in coincidences, but you mentioned about the tree falling.
Yeah.
Hurricane Ike, when it came through Texas, I was living with a friend of mine at the time, and he was security guard out at one of the power plants, so he had to work that night. And I figured, and I worked for the city, so I had to be on call just in case something happened. So I figured I was going to come home and I would just go to bed, go to sleep. By the time I got up in the morning, the hurricane be over, blah, 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 blah. So I guess it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I woke up with the ceiling falling in on top of me. And when we went back to look, this tree fell through the room I was in, and it literally missed my head by about a foot. So when he mentioned about the tree, I was like, oh my God, really? they had a tree incident too.
I'm going to have to like look this up. I'm going to have to like go to my mentor and be like, what is the significance of trees falling in or around people that we need to know? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure it's telling us something.
Hey, well, let's say I'm here for a reason. That's all I could say. I don't, maybe this is the reason I'm here. I don't know, but my journey is not over. And until I've accomplished what I need to accomplish, I'm still going to keep on trucking,
Yeah,
but,
I love that.
Okay, so do you have a website, social media that you'd like to share so people can get in contact with you?
Yeah. So my website is just www.stacygissal.com. And my Instagram is at Stacy_Gissal. I can send that to you, Kyle, too, so you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
the last
please.
name is Gissal. Like there's not a whole lot of us out there. Not a lot of Stacy Gissals out there, but please connect. I love to connect with new people. And, if anything resonated with you, I would love to hear what it was, because Kyle probably knows sometimes you go on these things and you get done and you're like, did I say anything worth a damn? I kind of blacked out. So, if anything resonated with you, I'd love to hear what it was. And just if there's any way that I can support you or your listeners, like, please just let me know. There is on the website too, you can go on, and I have a freebie that you can click on, and it's just like it's a PDF that kind of takes you through some of the steps that I use to start to transform your life. So feel free to hop on and grab that as well.
Okay. Well, do you have any words of wisdom before we go?
Oh man,
I'm putting you on the spot now.
That's another loaded question. Okay. So there is a quote that is just about everywhere. If you look at my website, if you look at my email signature, and it is that there's nothing about a caterpillar that makes you believe it'll become a butterfly. And so I'm just going to leave you with that, because I think that you have no idea where you're going or what you're capable of if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and kind of see where it goes. So I'll just leave you with that.
Well, thank you. And Stacy, it was really nice to getting to know you. And I hope we can stay in touch. And you're always welcome to come back on the show anytime you'd like.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Kyle. This has been amazing. And thank you. And thank you, like I said, for offering a space for people to just come in and be themselves. And what you're doing it matters. And I just appreciate being here. And I would love to come back on. Who the hell knows what we'll get into that time.
I hear you. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I also want to thank all of our listeners and the people that watch us. Without your support, we just couldn't do what we do. And please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. If you liked something, tell me. If you didn't like something, tell me. I want to hear it all. And until the next one, take care and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network,